potato chews for my dogs, and they're just an alternative to rawhide. So they're like the vegan or just healthier version alternative to rawhide that you can get in stores. And it was nearly $20 a bag. So ridiculous, because all it was just dehydrated sweet potato. So instead of wasting all that money, I looked here online on how to make them, and it's so easy. All you have to do is dehydrate them, or like me, if you're like myself and you don't have a dehydrator, you just put them in the oven and you'll see how to do it. So easy, and a lot of you guys requested it because I put it on my Instagram story at Sorsha, where I share a lot of stuff. Here we are making sweet potato chews for the dogs 3 different ways. So if you want to learn how to make those, keep on watching. For the plain sweet potato chews, all you need is a sweet potato or 2, depending on the size. Usually sweet potatoes this size fill up a baking sheet perfectly. Using a mandolin or a knife, which is what I used to use until recently, and a knife definitely works, but you have to be a lot more careful, and it's harder to achieve such nice, even slices that aren't so thick. I chose to cut the potato in half because it makes it easier to slice, even if you're using a mandolin. And if you're using a knife, please make sure to be really, really careful, and you also want to cut the ends of the potatoes off, because then the potato will have something to balance on while you're cutting it with the knife. So with the mandolin, I like to take advantage of the fact that there's a crinkle cut option and use that for the dog sweet potato chews, because it just looks more appealing and I think it makes it more fun. Since these are the plain chews, all we need to do is line the slices up on an oven-safe baking rack or a parchment paper-lined baking sheet. Then stick them in the oven at 230 degrees Fahrenheit for 2.5 hours or more, depending on your oven and the thinness or the thickness of the chews. Once you've decided that they're done, take them out of the oven and let them cool completely before serving to your puppy. Most basic way to make sweet potato chews for your dogs. It's super easy. You don't have to like soak them in anything like you're gonna have to do in the following recipes, but it's so good for them still because it's full of fiber and all those good things that sweet potatoes have. And it's crazy because a lot of people are like, oh, dogs just love meat and that's all they want. No, they love fruits and vegetables as well. I mean, some of them may vary. They have their preferences. They have their taste buds just like us humans do. But sweet potato chews, the basic ones, are still great for them, even if you don't have anything that you soak them in, which you'll see very, very soon in this video. They'll love them just as much as they love the other ones, unless they don't have a taste for the other ones and they're just like, ew. My dogs love these so much, and they can even chew them on this white couch and not even stain it, even though I prefer them not to, obviously, because like, ew, like saliva and spit and dog stuff in their mouths. But I mean, it's not going to stain or anything like that unless you were to like soak them in turmeric. I don't know if turmeric is good for dogs or anything like that. That is something to look up, but even then it doesn't stain any kind of material that they chew the sweet potato chews on. For the cinnamon sweet potato chews, you need a sweet potato or 2 depending on the size, and you also need ground cinnamon and or cinnamon sticks. Use the same cutting and slicing methods I used for the plain chews for the cinnamon chews. In a pot, add cinnamon and enough water to fill up the pot halfway. I chose to use both cinnamon sticks and ground cinnamon because I feel like the cinnamon sticks aren't enough on their own, but they're so fun, so that's why I use them as well. Now put the cinnamon concoction, the cinnamon water, that's literally what it is, it's that simple. Put the cinnamon water on the stove to boil to liven up the cinnamon. Let the cinnamon water cool completely before you add in the sweet potatoes because you don't want them to be soft and flimsy. Then once the cinnamon water isn't hot or even warm, you can finally add in the sweet potatoes and let them absorb all the goodness and nutrients from the cinnamon for 30 minutes or however long you want them to soak in the cinnamon. I soaked mine for 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and I just let them sit there, and I went off and did other productive things, and then I came back and I dealt with them again. But you don't have to do it that long, or you could even do it longer if you want. After a while of soaking, drain all of the water. Then roll the sweet potatoes in a hand towel and dry up as much moisture as possible. Either on an oven-safe baking rack or on a parchment paper-lined baking sheet, line up the slices of sweet potato. Put them in the oven at 230 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 2.5 hours or more. Keep checking on them, and depending on your oven and the thinness or thickness of your slices, it always varies, but you're going for a chewy consistency or a chewy texture, because consistency would be more of like a liquid, right? Not a liquid, but like more of like a mousse. I don't know, but you're going for a chewy texture. And then once you've decided that they're at your perfect chewy texture, take them out of the oven and let them cool completely before serving to your puppy or your puppies. A lot of people think that cinnamon is dangerous for dogs, but actually the ASPCA has ruled it as non-toxic, so it's perfectly fine to give to your dogs, or it's perfectly fine to soak sweet potato chews that you are going to give to your dogs in cinnamon tea, cinnamon water, boiled cinnamon. What would I properly call that cinnamon concoction that I just made for the sweet potato chews for the dogs? Like, what is that? So now that we've covered that cinnamon is perfectly safe for dogs to consume, it also has a number of health benefits. It has been shown to increase their energy and vitality and also improve their brain function. Additionally, cinnamon has antifungal properties, which help protect against the certain type of fungus which causes yeast infections. Yeast infections are pretty common in dogs with allergies, so if your dogs have allergies, this is really good to give to them because of the cinnamon, and also even if they don't, it's still really good to give to them because it's a sweet potato first off, and then it also has the cinnamon, which boosts their energy and vitality and improves their brain function. It's all just really good. You need a sweet potato or two depending on the size, and usually a large sweet potato fills up a baking sheet perfectly, and you also need some oregano. You can use either fresh or dried oregano, or you can use both. If you're using fresh oregano, cutting it for some reason for me was really hard, so you can do that if it works for you, but I just decided just to rip it apart and it worked out perfectly. And the reason why we want to cut it or rip it apart is because it releases more of the flavor, which I feel like releases more of the benefits from the oregano that your dogs are going to get. If you're using dried oregano, I suggest rubbing it in your palms to bring it back alive to the best that it can come back alive out of the grave. But if you can get your hands on fresh oregano, I highly suggest that. In a pot, add oregano and enough water to fill up at least half of the pot. You don't want too much water depending on the oregano, because then if you have not so much oregano in there and a lot of water, it's not going to be as beneficial. But then if you have too much oregano and not enough water, then it's going to be really potent and strong, which is fine, but I mean, depending on your dogs, they might not like that and it might be too unappealing for them. So you just kind of want to test the waters, no pun intended, and see what works best for you and your pups. Now put the oregano and water mixture on the stove and let it boil so that the oregano can liven up as much as possible. Then let it cool completely before letting the sweet potatoes in on all the fun, and you don't want the water to be hot or even warm when you add the sweet potatoes, because then they're going to soften and you don't want that. And once the oregano water isn't hot or even warm, you can add the sweet potatoes and let them absorb all the goodness from the oregano for 30 minutes or however long you think, depending on the strength of the oregano, and you can kind of smell it. So if the oregano isn't very potent and you can't really smell it, then let it soak for really long, for like up to an hour or two even. And if it is really strong, then you can let it soak for like 30 minutes to an hour. But you can always pull out the sweet potato and just smell it yourself and decide how strong you want the oregano to be in the sweet potato. After a while of soaking, drain all of the water. Then roll up the sweet potatoes in a hand towel and dry up as much of the moisture as possible, because you don't want them wet, like I said, because then they're not going to turn out as good and they're going to get really crispy. But you don't want a lot of moisture in the sweet potatoes, because then they're going to get all weird and really crispy and they're going to shrink. You don't want that. It's perfectly fine if they do, but it's just not as fun, you know? Either on an oven-safe baking rack or on a parchment paper lined baking sheet, line up the sweet potatoes evenly. Or not evenly, depending on how you slice them. It's perfectly fine if they overlap. Put them in the oven on 230 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 2.5 hours. And depending on your oven and where you live and the thinness of your slices, you want to keep checking on them because it's always going to vary. There's no perfect way to do it and there's no set way to do it. So just keep checking on them and find and figure out what works best for you. Once you're completely pleased with the baking of the CHEWS, you don't want them to be too crispy or too soft. You want them to be chewy. So once you're completely pleased with them, pull them out of the oven and let them cool completely before serving your pups. And you don't have to refrigerate these, and these last a while. Obviously, you want to give them to your pups as soon as possible because then they're the freshest. But they do last a while and you don't have to refrigerate them. Oregano is a non-toxic herb to give to your dogs, and it helps with digestive problems, diarrhea, and gas. Oregano is high in antioxidants and flavonoids, and it's also been reported as an antimicrobial. Can't talk clearly. What I'm about to say is pretty ironic since I myself am vegan and the majority of you guys watching this are also vegan as well. I could have just said also vegan or vegan as well. Why did I have to? Apparently farmers have replaced antibiotics for oregano oil in the feed for the livestock. No, I hate that word. That's so oppressive. Oregano oil on their that's oppressive. On the animals that they make profit off of and exploit and use and torture and kill and sexually assault. They're using oregano oil in replacement for antibiotics to keep their, oh God, I keep saying their, no, oh my God, why is this in our vocabulary, you guys? We don't have ownership over these other beings. Like, we have ownership over our own selves, but we don't have ownership over these other beings. Maybe like our pets, but we don't like use them for like exploitation, and we don't sexually assault them, and we don't take away their babies so that we can have their milk, and we don't slaughter them or anything like that. But using it in this sense, like you own them, like that's just so like Hitler mentality. Like, I own these Jews. Like, ew, like let's just stop saying that. Anyway, the farmers use oregano oil in replacement for the antibiotics for the animals that they use, exploit, torture, sexually assault, and kill, so that, you know, they don't get as sick and unhealthy, even though they're in very, very unhealthy, unnatural situations. But that's pretty cool to know that they're using something that's natural rather than something that's not so natural, you know what I mean? Which is pretty cool. I mean, it's not cool that they do this to these animals and make profit off of their bodies and their secretions and stuff like that. That's so messed up. But it's pretty cool to know that oregano oil is replacing antibiotics, something that is man-made, to keep away disease and stuff like that. And then we can give that to our dogs, and you can even like chop up some oregano or just put the oregano oil like a little bit because it's very highly concentrated in your dog's food, and they're getting those benefits and keeping their body healthy and nourished and good and disease-free, which is what we want. We don't want to have to go through seeing our best friend not so good and going through hard stuff. And it's really hard too, especially with like dogs or cats or any kind of other species that we can't communicate with on our language level, to where we can be like, hey, what's going on? Could you please tell me like your symptoms so we could like figure it out? We have to go to a vet, which is perfectly fine, but like, you know, it's still not completely sure because we can't talk to them and see how they're feeling. And it's just good to prevent any kind of bump in the road as possible. So why not put some oregano oil in your dog's food or their treats, or the sweet potatoes, soak it in oregano porridge like I just did for this video, and then dry it up in the oven and then give it to your dog and they chew on it, and it's really cool because it's like a bone. I mean, it's like a rawhide. That's what it is. It's an alternative to a rawhide, but it's so cool because you can make it at home and it's so affordable. It's crazy. Really fun to make for your dogs because they're eco-friendly. They're zero waste unless you get like a plastic bag for your sweet potatoes, or if you go to Eco Bags, which I wish I had like an affiliate link or some kind of coupon code to offer to you guys because that would be really cool. I want to work with them so bad, or at least I want some of their Eco Bags because like, hello, zero waste, let's get it going. But either way, you can just skip the plastic bag and it's zero waste, and it's simple, and you know everything that's going into this treat that you're giving to your dog, rather than this like plastic thing that they're gonna like chew on that's apparently like rawhide rawhide that I don't know what's in it, but apparently it's not so good for dogs, so this is a really, really good alternative. And also, my dogs are vegan, and I don't make their food. They actually eat VDOG, which I have a coupon code for you to save some money. Use the code Sorsha at the checkout on VDOG and save some money on some vegan food or some vegan treats, or make these treats and then have the food from VDOG. A lot of you may be watching and you agree with the sweet potato chews, but you don't agree with the vegan diet for your dogs. But I made a whole entire video sharing the facts with you guys, which will be linked in the description box, and as well, it will be at the end of this video. And like this video, like it, subscribe if you want to subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification button, because the subscribe button just really isn't enough for YouTube these days. Let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think about these dog recipes. I mean, I love making recipe videos in general, and you guys like them as well from what I hear. So let me know what you think about these dog recipe videos. Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Are they helpful? Also, if you guys make these sweet potato chews for your dogs, send me photos on Instagram or on Twitter or on Snapchat, because Snapchat's not dead yet, or just let me know how it goes in the comments, because I want to hear from you, and also I want to see them, and I want to let me know. And I want to know how it goes, and if your dog likes them or dislikes them and is like, what is this? I want meat. I want a dead animal. I want that thing that's like beefy tasting. Ugh.